So yeah, as you can see, Raw has closed the gap, and we are now tied 3-3 in the Raw versus SmackDown scoring. The ending to Raw was particularly what tipped the scales. I thought both shows overall, again, not necessarily that great, not necessarily terrible either, but the real tipper was the ending to Monday Night Raw, which I have not talked about yet, and I will take the time to do that now. The ending to Raw was the four-way to determine the new Universal Champion, Big Cass versus Roman Reigns versus Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins. It came down to Reigns, Rollins, and Owens. Triple H made his grand return, pedigreed Roman Reigns outside the ring, and allowed Seth Rollins to get that pinfall, and then, in a shocker, Triple H turned on Seth Rollins, pedigreed him, allowing Kevin Owens to become the new Universal Champion. A huge shocking twist. It was really interesting, though, when they were setting it up, and Triple H had already attacked Roman and pedigreed him outside the ring. I noticed that when Triple H put Kevin Owens back inside the ring, he didn't attack him or pedigree him outside the ring like he did to Roman. And immediately it clicked in my brain. I thought, oh, what if he turns on Seth? And sure enough, that's exactly what they did. Which, I'm not saying that I'm brilliant and I saw it coming a mile away, but when I noticed he didn't attack Owens outside the ring, the idea kind of popped into my head. And sure enough, that's exactly what they did. I thought the ending was very shocking. I thought it was a nice surprise to go out on. I thought it was, it is something that will hopefully be the genesis of much bigger storylines down the road, and have Raw go in a much hotter direction. I thought it was very cool, actually, for the most part. You could say Triple H is inserting himself into the main event scene again, and I do have my fear that a Seth Rollins face turn will turn into a Randy Orton 2004 face turn, which I thought was a disaster when they did the whole angle where Triple H booted Orton out of Evolution and Orton turned face. That was so damaging to Orton, and it's a miracle that he recovered from it. Thank God he had that feud with Undertaker where they basically just ignored that the face turn ever happened and they just made Randy Orton great again. That face turn was an absolute disaster. And I've said before that angle, the way that angle should have played out is that Orton should have been the one to boot Triple H out of Evolution. And I think that should have been the natural progression of the story. But, that was over a decade ago, so no use complaining about it now. But I do have that fear with Seth, that they're going to turn him face and he's going to suck as a babyface. I hope that doesn't happen. I like Seth, despite recent accusations from certain talents that he's a reckless worker, which he did hurt Sting, he did hurt Finn Balor, he broke John Cena's nose. Maybe Seth needs to be a little bit more careful in there. I don't know. You don't want injuries to become a pattern with your top stars, or any stars for that matter. You just don't want it to become a pattern. Although, I guess you could also blame it on the rigorous WWE schedule that they're working these style of matches on house shows and on TVs and constantly, and that's why everybody's getting hurt. You could do more squash matches on TV to reduce the schedule. That would be another thing that would help. Not have everybody wrestle on every single fucking show. That's another thing that could help you out. But I got really sidetracked. One thing that I found very interesting about the ending to Raw was Stephanie and Mick Foley were clearly not on board with what Triple H did based on their reactions. I know that was interesting, so we could get a schism and a balance of power thing, but how is that going to work with Triple H and Stephanie being married? So, again, they could get some really interesting storyline possibilities out of it, with Seth being on the old guard side with Foley and Stephanie, and Kevin Owens kind of being the new corporate champion that represents Triple H. You could get some really good things out of it. Now, how do I feel about Kevin Owens as champion? When I looked at the four-way itself, I said, no way Big Cass gets it. He's too new. He needs a lot more build-up. I think he's got a lot of potential, and he's great upside. He's very likable, but he's not there yet. Roman Reigns, you know how I feel about Roman Reigns. As long as he's a babyface, just no. Turn him heel, see if you can make that work, but do not run with him as top face. Just don't do it. It ain't gonna work. And then you have the guy I thought they were going to put it on was Seth, and I felt like that was the logical, safe choice. If you wanted to be logical and you wanted to be safe, Seth was the guy to go with because he's the guy that hurt Finn Balor, put him on the shelf. He's also the guy that Finn Balor defeated for the Universal title initially. But Seth hurt him, and then Seth wins the title in his absence, and then you eventually build that up when Finn Balor comes back, and then you do Finn and Seth at WrestleMania, which they could still do. It just we'll see what happens in between. But it is something that Seth was the most logical choice out of all of them. Owens, to me, was the second choice, but he'd been hurt so much by inconsistent booking that I felt like the only way he's going to work as the winner here is if they do something big with it. It's got to be a big... He can't just straight up win the belt. There's got to be some kind of big angle attached to it, and that's exactly what they did. So now I'm very intrigued to see how a Kevin Owens title reign develops and grows moving forward. So the ending to Raw I thought was very interesting, very fascinating, and a great way to end on. And I'm very interested in seeing how they follow up tomorrow night and this wonderful Labor Day weekend Raw that we're getting. My company, my new job, gave me the Friday off too. It's a company sanctioned holiday, so I got a 4-day weekend out of this. It was pretty sweet. I don't mean to brag, but I'm bragging. It was pretty good. I fully mean to brag. I'm a braggadocious asshole. But yeah, I thought the ending to Raw was very, very strong this week, and that was more than enough to put it over the top on SmackDown, which was a fairly blasé show for the most part. They introduced the new titles, the new women's title and the new tag titles. I think it's a mistake. We knew they were going to do it. It's no big shock that there's a new women's title and new tag titles. Oh, wait, that was last week, wasn't it? Did they introduce the new belts last week, or... Fuck it, I don't remember. I'm already getting to a point where all the shows are running together. All I remember is that AJ Styles took a nut shot at the end of the show. Yeah, actually that was last week. Okay, sorry, I'm getting my shows confused. Wow, but yeah, I guess I'll elaborate on this anyway. I think having a new women's title and new tag titles is just, it splits everything in half and just dilutes it, and to me, I would have had the women's division on one show and the tag division on another show, just to give both brands separate identities, because really, as I've said before, there's very little to really separate the two shows as far as giving them a separate identity. There's the color, which is, who cares, and the talents, but it's different talents being inserted into similar formulas, and Raw's an hour longer. That's very little to really separate the two. One thing that does separate them is Talking Smack, which I, on the insistence of everybody else, I started watching. And I'm glad I did. I really like it, actually, because you see the wrestlers acting in unscripted scenarios where they're just being themselves and responding to criticisms. The Usos are responding to getting some hate from the crowd based on their association with Roman Reigns. Renee Young responded to memes that were being made about her and felt the need to respond to that. Daniel Bryan was cracking jokes about the negative fan response to the WWE Universal title belt, that stupid looking belt. And it feels very honest and fresh and real. And I guess that'll lead me into the one that happened last week, the Daniel Bryan and Miz segment, which I thought was terrific. I thought Miz came off as very passionate. Both guys had their own points of view, and Miz, who I was in complete agreement with. I love you, Bryan. I really do. And I love that the thing was very little, according to Daniel Bryan, very little of it was scripted, which again is very, very good. And I think that's why it came off as believably as it did. But looking at the scenario, I got to agree with Miz, because Daniel Bryan's saying he works a soft WWE style, or what was considered the soft WWE style until it's evolved into what it is today, where everybody's getting hurt. And Miz said, "Look, I've never gotten seriously injured. I think the worst he's gotten, he did get concussed in the Cena WrestleMania match. I think that was 27." But he hasn't had any significant injuries that I can recall. He said he's never been injured. I don't know about that, but I didn't bother to fact check it. But he also talked about why, and he followed this up on SmackDown this week. Yeah, see, this is where the championship thing I got flustered. But yeah, he opened up SmackDown this week, and again, I kind of agreed with him where he said things like, Of course I'm trying not to get hit. Why would I not try not to get hit? And I don't remember what the exact verbiage was, but yeah, I mean, logically thinking, you would think that their strategies would be to not to take big moves from people and to avoid getting out of big moves so that they don't get hurt, and not use their body as a goddamn javelin or a lawn dart and, just throw their body out there with reckless abandon and, get injured and everything. So I really kind of agreed with Miz. And in 2 segments, Miz became one of the top baby faces on SmackDown in my eyes, because I felt like he was being unfairly criticized for things that make sense. And he explained in his yelling and his passionate, half-crazed promo, he made more sense than Daniel Bryan did. I think, personally. He said everything. Look, I don't get hurt. I'm trying not to get hit. That's part of my job, is to try not to get hit. It's smart strategy, and I outsmart people, and I'm good at what I do, and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, I kind of agree with Miz. And then when Dolph Ziggler came out and fucking challenged him to a fight, and, I mean, this is a whole nother topic all on its own, but, man, oh man, the morality between the heels and the baby faces now is so warped. Because here's what divides heels and baby faces now. Baby faces are the characters that want to fight on the spot, with or without referees, with or without rules. They just want to, they're just so passionate that they're just, God damn it, they gotta throw fists and fight people. And the heels are the ones that only want to fight in sanctioned matches, in sanctioned situations, and in situations where it's a safe environment for them to perform their job, which is actually pro wrestling and working sanctioned matches. And if they don't want to have random impromptu fights, then that makes them cowards. And the fans hate them for it, which to me makes... It's a warped morality that kind of reminds me of movies like, and this is going to be a fairly labored comparison, but I don't care, Godzilla's Revenge, where the kid is being bullied, and he learns self-defense from Godzilla because he's got a warped imagination. And the movie basically ends with him becoming a bully. Rocky V, Rocky's kid is having trouble with bullies, so he learns how to fight, and then ultimately kind of becomes a bully himself. And that's kind of what, the WWE babyfaces are kind of creating, where they're these angry, overly passionate, muscle-headed, just morons that are trying to instigate fights with people at every step of the way. And what the hell did Miz do to Dolph Ziggler to warrant Ziggler storming down to the ring and challenging him to an impromptu fight? Please tell me. I don't know. And I kind of, again, I side with Miz. Why should I get into a fight with you, dude? What kind of crazy psychotic person are you? If somebody gets in my face completely unprovoked and starts challenging me to a fight, I'd be sitting there going, dude, what the fuck do you want to fight over? What, are you drunk? Are you high? Are you... Did you roid up and you're raging? What's going on, man? And it happens so frequently now that it's just really strange. Roman Reigns bitching out Rusev and ruining his whole wedding celebration thing that he had set up, and getting in his face and antagonizing him. It's this really weird thing, and I always learned as a kid that, if somebody's challenging you to a fight that you shouldn't be in, you turn the other cheek and let it go. I learned that from watching He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. He-Man, the most powerful man in the world, whose name is literally He-Man, told me to turn the other cheek if somebody's bullying me or challenging me to a fight and calling me a chicken or whatever. Those type of... I learned that from a cheesy fucking 80s cartoon. Which I'm pretty sure also taught me acceptance of homosexuality, but that's a whole nother story. I watched a main character wear pink for his day job, and after that, homosexuality seems perfectly normal. And gay people don't freak me out because of it. So thank you, He-Man. You're just a walking PSA. But it's I mean, the morality of the WWE babyface is so weird to me. And again, when I was a kid watching wrestling, the heels were typically the ones that instigated the fights, like Savage beating up Hogan backstage in the build up to WrestleMania 5. Sid, like, beating the hell out of all those jobbers post-match just to make a point, so to say, look, Hogan, I'm going to fuck you up at WrestleMania 8. Nails beating the fuck out of Virgil and breaking his nose, and attacking Boss Man. And these are examples that not a lot of people remember. They're not highly celebrated, but at least it kept a somewhat consistent morality of where the heels are the jerks that start the fights, and the faces are the ones that want to keep things fair and want to get it and want to prove their points in the ring. You could say that Stone Cold Steve Austin was definitely not that type of guy. He was a baby face. I use that in quotation marks. That would get into fights with people and tear down the shows and drive beer trucks and Zambonis and bust everything up backstage or in the ring or whatever. Because he was an angry, crazy person. But he wasn't portrayed as this moral good guy who had the moral high ground. He was just a psychopath that turned his venom on people that kind of deserved it because they were assholes. But and again, if the asshole deserves it, okay, like Randy Savage jumping Jake Roberts after Jake Roberts ruined his wedding reception and then had a King Cobra bite him. So when Savage jumped him at Tuesday in Texas, it's like, yeah, I kind of don't blame him. Or, if there's some kind of a justification for it, okay, fine. But I can't fathom what Rusev did to, raise the ire of Roman Reigns. I can't fathom what Miz did to raise the ire of Dolph Ziggler. It's just Dolph Ziggler's being a douchebag, and he's probably just still upset that he lost to Dean Ambrose at SummerSlam. So it's just, like I said, the way the WWE writes their baby faces is so weird to me, and sometimes it's just really, really strange. But I had to get off on that sidebar. Just wanted to talk about that because I thought that was really weird. And to me, Miz is one of the top baby faces on SmackDown now. That's just how it is. It's just, I agreed with him on Talking Smack, and I agreed with him in that opening segment on SmackDown this week. But I think that's enough as far as talking about the WWE goes. I do have the top 10 matches for August. That'll be at the end of the video where I touch up more on the Cruiserweight Classic and a little bit of NXT and a few other things as well. But before I get into that, I do want to talk about Lucha Underground Season 3, which is starting next week. Yes! It's starting Wednesday, so I guess this week, because it's Sunday now. I don't know, the 4-day weekend really fucked me up. I don't know what day it is anymore, but I don't know what day it is. I don't know what episode of SmackDown I watched last. It's my brain's fucked. I've been reading too much Star Wars, but it's Lucha Underground Season 3 starting up. We didn't have to wait long for Season 3, so it's not like last year where the wait was really long and we didn't even know if we were going to get a Season 2 for the longest time, and now it feels like we had a nice break. And now Season 3 starting up already. It's like, whoa, really? Wow, that was fast. Okay, cool. I also found out today that Shin Gojira is having its U.S. theatrical run the week of October 11th, which it's all good news up here. It's all good news. I'm super happy. It's my nerd life is going very, very well. All of my unhealthy addictions to the intellectual properties that I'm a fan of, it's just all good things coming my way. I'm really happy, but Lucha Underground Season 3 is starting up. I'm super excited about it. I think with some of the hanging story threads coming out of Season 2, I think we could get some very, very good things moving forward. Lucha Underground has maintained a fairly high standard, to the point, and in fact, their standard's so high that some people were disappointed with Season 2, because it's not, and literally every review I read was, the show's not bad. It's just, we expect more from them because Lucha Underground is just that fucking good. And that's, okay, fair enough. I really enjoyed Season 2 overall. I did feel like the shortened season kind of quickened the pace a little bit. And I kind of like the slower pace of Season 1. They had more time. But I'm really excited for Season 3. I want to see what they do, especially with Pentagon. I want to see what he does moving forward, and I think there could be a lot of really good things. And now I'm wondering what's going to happen now that Dario's been arrested. What's going to happen? What's the temple going to be like now? Who took over the temple in Dario's absence? We don't know. And that'll be a huge first thing for the first episode. And I'm really excited to see it next week. I mean, we've got for 2 weeks, for 2 glorious weeks, we're gonna have Lucha Underground, Cruiserweight Classic, and NXT all on the same night, 2 Wednesdays. And actually, Cruiserweight Classic, I believe, is having its 2-part finale. Sorry, I'm looking at my calendar here. How does this work out? Okay. I think they have their 2-part finale next... Is it the Wednesday after this? I think? I'm not sure. They're having a 2-hour finale to close up the tournament. I believe it's next Wednesday. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, it's coming close to an end, and it has been terrific so far. But... yeah, Wednesday, it's going to be a fun wrestling night for the next couple of weeks. I'm really excited about it. NXT will actually be the weakest of the 3 shows. It's really, really strange how that worked out. And that's not a bad thing. It's just, man, I've got so many good wrestling shows, and they're all so different, and it's great. And then you watch you watch main roster WWE, Raw and SmackDown, and it's just homogenized and mostly kind of dull, except for you get those moments like the ending of Raw this week that spice it up a lot. But how long are they going to be able to keep that up? I don't know. But it is all very interesting. But yeah, mostly positive stuff going on in wrestling. I'm kind of happy about it. And speaking of positive things in pro wrestling, it is time for me to do my top 10 matches for the previous month. So, the best matches from August of 2016. And I have to say... This list was largely dominated by 2 very special tournaments. The New Japan G1 Climax and WWE's Cruiserweight Classic. I thought both tournaments have consistently delivered great matches, great action, and all centered around a tournament with proper context where everything feels important. The CWC in particular has been so strong, and I was torn. Am I going to give Brand of the Month to New Japan, or am I going to give it to the Cruiserweight Classic? Those are the 2 I had it down to. I ultimately sided with the Cruiserweight Classic because, you know, it's wrapping up mid-September, so I don't know when I'm going to have another chance to give the Cruiserweight Classic more praise. So I thought, yeah, and they've been great this month with all the individual talents that they've introduced and all their personalities and their backstories. And all the great matches that they've had throughout this tournament. It's been terrific. And it's not just a showcase for the high-flying cruiserweight style, because really, if Raw was nothing but cruiserweights, it would get boring. I would hate it. WCW, same thing. If the whole show was nothing but cruiserweights, I would have hated it, because everybody looks the same, everybody does the same thing. It's not interesting and it's not exciting. But through the Cruiserweight Classic, 1 hour a week, the WWE has provided us with a show that's vastly different from what they normally do. It shows off various different styles, different personalities, and they've done it in a way that's booked very well, where everything has context and everything feels important, and it's a worthwhile endeavor. And variety is the spice of life. If I had to watch a 3-hour Cruiserweight show on a weekly basis, I'd probably lose my mind, but as something that's so different from what the WWE normally does, for a company that has never done a Cruiserweight division well at all. They had the junior heavyweights in the 80s, where they were just something that they pulled out of the mothballs once in a while and were really nothing that special. They would just go out there and have a filler match once in a while. Some of the matches were really good, it's just that there was no context. They were just out there to fill a spot. In 97, they had the light heavyweight title, which never amounted to much of anything. The biggest thing they ever did with the light heavyweight title was Gilbert. So that gives you any indication. Then they had the Cruiserweight. When they adopted the Cruiserweight division, they, aside from being Rey Mysterio's belt, they could never really do much with it as far as building a fully strong division. I mean, you had that one period where Gregory Helms held it for like a year, but nobody cared. It was like nobody gave a shit because it was in a division that didn't matter. And it was just, the whole idea of a Cruiserweight division is just something that the WWE has never done well. But through the Cruiserweight Classic, they finally showcased Cruiserweight talents in a meaningful way. Hopefully that translates well on Raw, and we actually get a good Cruiserweight division out of it. We already know we're getting Ciampa, we're getting Gargano, and we're getting Cedric Alexander as part of the division, and you know Neville's going to be part of it. So, good things are going on, and hopefully we get a good Cruiserweight division out of this when it's all said and done. So, Cruiserweight Classic is my brand of the month. But going over my top 10 matches, let me pull up the list right here. All right, from the Cruiserweight Classic, actually August 31st, so last day of the month. Gran Metalik versus Akira Tozawa in the quarterfinals. Just a terrific match. As the quarterfinals, we get closer to the finals. The matches have really been heating up, and Gran Metalik. Funny thing here, I was totally pulling for him because Tozawa beat Jack Gallagher, who was one of my favorite guys in the tournament. I was so upset when he lost. So because Tozawa beat Gallagher, I was like, nah, fuck that guy. I want Metalik to win. And that was great because, again, the personalities of these guys really shine through in some cases. And, Gallagher was this gentlemanly guy who you could see kind of palling around with the vaudevillains almost. Very British in his presentation, but very kind of colorful too. And he would go in there in the ring and just tie people up in pretzels, and it was hilarious and just very, very fun to watch, and just a really cool, likable guy. So when Tozawa beat him, I was legitimately disappointed. And Metalik won, which was great, and I was super happy with it. But I really enjoyed this match. It was, again, great clashing styles, very hard-hitting and high-flying, and very good way to... Yeah, very good match for the quarterfinals of this already great tournament. We go from one tournament to another. Number 9, Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Marifuji in the G1 Climax. This is the one that had that really scary spot where Tanahashi took a pile driver on the apron, which that was, anytime I see anything like that, I cringe, because that could go horribly wrong. Fortunately, it didn't. Excellent match. I thought Marifuji really brought a lot to the G1 Climax. Different talent, different style, and he interacted with one of the best guys in New Japan in Tanahashi, so I just thought they had a very good match. Number 8, Jay Lethal versus Adam Cole for the Ring of Honor World title from Death Before Dishonor 14. Great main event. It was the end of Lethal's really long title reign, so it was historic for that. And Adam Cole was probably the best choice to take it off him at this point, given his position in the Bullet Club. I thought the match itself was very good and very suiting for Lethal's final match as champion. And now it'll be interesting to see how everything moves forward as far as how Lethal's going to fit into the main event scene in Ring of Honor. So, again, very good stuff out of this one. Number 7, AJ Styles versus John Cena at SummerSlam. I was just happy that AJ went over clean. This automatically made it better than the match they had 2 months ago. This one, it was like, look, AJ won clean. I'm happy. In a lot of ways, it played out like the typical John Cena finisher fest, but I thought the finisher festy stuff was a little bit better this time because they were legitimately shocking, like AJ kicking out of the top rope AA, and AJ, it was so satisfying to see AJ get the win. I was just super happy. So, and now, because of that win, he is now the number 1 contender for SmackDown, and he's actually been set up for that, and it's not going to be a case of, oh, Cena's got to beat him 6 times to make up for it. It's like, no, he beat Cena, he's moving on, he's moving up the rankings, and that's good. All is well as far as that goes for me, so really happy about that. Number 6, Kota Ibushi versus Brian Kendrick, quarterfinals match, also from August 31st. So, yeah, the Cruiserweight Classic snuck those last 2 in there. Kota Ibushi and Brian Kendrick, excellent match. I think Ibushi has had great matches throughout the tournament. So has Brian Kendrick, who, I gotta be honest, I was never, and this really highlights how greatly they presented the Cruiserweight talents in this tournament. And it's really, and I hate to bash TNA with this, but it's really the type of thing I wish TNA had done with their World X Cups, where they would bring in all these guys, but they wouldn't tell anybody who they were. They just kind of go, here we go, these are the Japanese guys, and these are the Mexican guys. And you're just kind of expected to do your own research and figure out who they are. Whereas with the benefits of the WWE Network is that the WWE has basically all the TV time they want, so they were able to basically tell us who these guys were and give us proper context. And Brian Kendrick is a guy that I know for years, and he was always an internet darling that I never really saw the appeal in. I saw like a scrappy little guy. I don't want to use the term vanilla midget, but I thought he was just a scrappy guy that was fun at best, but I never saw him as a potential main event talent. I think the way the internet talked about him, you would think that he was, and I don't think he was ever on, say, Bryan Danielson's level. I never put him up that high, and that's common. There's always those internet favorites that I just never saw what the big deal was. I'm trying to think of some other examples. Michael Shane was definitely one where the internet raved about him to me, and I never saw anything in him. I just never saw it. But anyway, you got Brian Kendrick in this tournament, and they're building him up as the old guy that's looking for that one last run, that one last chance at stardom. And then Daniel Bryan on commentary, he's friends with him. They came up in the same class with Shawn Michaels. And he was completely biased and pulling for Bryan the entire tournament. But it made sense here because Bryan's his friend. So it added a little bit extra to Kendrick's matches that you had Daniel Bryan so passionate. It's like, I want my friend to win this so bad. And it added a lot more drama to everything, too. And it was... it really created an emotional moment here where Kota Ibushi put Brian Kendrick away. And then Daniel Bryan on commentary actually started to break down. He felt bad that Kendrick lost. And that's... I really did feel for Kendrick throughout the tournament. I thought he was the Cinderella story of the tournament. It's kind of like what... On Smackdown right now, you look at this tag team tournament that includes American Alpha and the Usos, and you would think that's, logically one of them's got to get it. But honestly, I'm pulling for Heath Slater and Rhino. It's like, Rhino he's never held a tag title in the States? I hope he wins. And Heath Slater, who's been fucked out of a contract so many times, it's like, he should have a contract now. He beat Randy Orton by DQ. Just because he wasn't fit to sign the damn thing immediately after the match because Orton's a psychopath who beat his brains in, he should have a contract. And it's little things like that. And it made me feel for Brian Kendrick, and he became the sympathetic favorite here. And that's how he was throughout the tournament. And to get that bit of emotion from Daniel Bryan after the match when Kendrick lost, I thought really kind of put it over the top and made it... It was kind of a tearjerker to see him lose. And for a guy that I never really thought was that special, this may have been the best run of his career. The matches he had throughout the tournament I thought were great, and the added emotion behind it, and the backstory behind it, and him trying to get that one last taste of success, made it all the more engaging. And this is the most I've ever enjoyed Brian Kendrick. I got to be perfectly honest, and I thought he did himself right in this tournament. Despite not making it all the way to the finals, obviously. But for the matches that we got out of him, I thought he did quite well. Number 5, The Revival versus Gargano and Ciampa for the NXT Tag Titles from NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. This was my favorite match from Brooklyn 2. I thought it was very good. Excellent tag match. The Revival has become my favorite part of NXT. I really look forward to the Tag Team Championship matches that they have. It was terrific, and Gargano and Ciampa, they've been kind of on fire lately. I'll get to them in a little bit, but I thought this was an excellent tag title match, and I was very happy with it. Number 4, Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Kazuchika Okada in the G1 Climax. The match that ultimately determined the A block, because it came down to Tanahashi and Okada. The winner was going to get the A block, and if they had a draw... Hiroki Goto would win the A block and move on to the finals, and that's exactly what happened. They had a time limit draw. Okada and Tanahashi have this wonderful chemistry with each other where it just feels like no matter how many times I've seen it, they always produce magic. And for them to work a time limit draw with each other, that's like another layer to their rivalry. That now they have that on their record, the time limit draw. As far as I know, they've never done it before. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they've never had a draw before. So. This was great to see. It was another outstanding match between two outstanding opponents that have impeccable chemistry with each other and just always deliver great main events. This was probably their weakest match that I've ever seen with each other, and that's saying a lot because their matches have been amazing. And this is, if I'm going to go by star ratings, their previous matches were 5 stars, and this one was 4 and 5 sixes, or 4 and 7/8 or something like that. This was an absolutely terrific match, and I again, another great match in their ever building rivalry and their ongoing series. It was terrific. I loved it. Number 3, Kota Ibushi versus Cedric Alexander from the second round of the Cruiserweight Classic. When was that? Was that 8/10? Yeah, August 10th. This was a really Cedric Alexander's coming out party. This was the match that really cemented him, and it was really appropriate that the show ended with Triple H calling him backstage to obviously sign a contract, and now he's going to be on the Raw Cruiserweight division. it was really appropriate because this was a huge coming out party for him and a huge star-making match for him, even in defeat. Ibushi ultimately won, obviously, and Cedric did absolutely terrific here, not just for the athletic moves that he did, but his reactions to everything. How frustrated he was getting that he just couldn't put Ibushi away, the shock on his face that he couldn't put Ibushi away. Those are the things that really stood out to me, and I thought Cedric came off exceptionally well here. And a terrific, terrific match in the Cruiserweight Classic, and I again, adored it. The Cruiserweight Classic's been outstanding. It's been great. And from there, we move on to number 2. From the G1 Climax, the match to determine the B block. Tetsuya Naito versus Kenny Omega. A battle of really two heels. I mean, I know Naito has a lot of support, and the Bullet Club will always have their fans, but really, it's a battle between two heels. And really, I could see either one of them winning it, given how they developed this year. I'd made the point in the previous video that these two really needed to fill the void of AJ and Nakamura, and I think to the best of their abilities, they've done very, very well. And it was appropriate that it came down to these two. I would have preferred it to be the finals, to be perfectly honest, of the whole thing. Because once Omega won, you kind of knew. It's like, well, no way Goto's beating him. But the action in this match was amazing, especially towards the end. The last few minutes or so were the counters and all the things that all the crazy stuff that they came up with for each other. It was all very, very good. Excellent match. Probably the best match of the G1 Climax, except for maybe... No, I'd say this was the best match of the G1 Climax. I thought it was outstanding. It was great, and loved it. And really, in a lot of ways, for me, it was the true finals of the G1 Climax. But really outstanding stuff, all the same. But my number one match of the month is going to go to Tomasso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano in the last match of the first round from the Cruiserweight Classic. That was August 3rd. So, you have these two guys that have been tag team partners in NXT. They're best friends. Well, I don't know about necessarily best friends, but in real life, but they're presented like they were best friends. That was how WWE presented it in the Cruiserweight Classic pre-match promos and video packages, and it was an excellent match to close out the first round with, because it was the first match that they did that was really emotionally charged. And I think that's the word I'm looking for, because before that, most of the first round was mostly establishing. It's like, all right, here's who Jack Gallagher is. Here's Brian Kendrick, and here's his story. And here's all these other things going on. This was the first really kind of emotionally charged one, I felt. There had been plenty of good competitive matches before that, but none of them, it was the first round. Everybody's getting their feet wet. Everybody's establishing themselves. This was the first one that really kicked everything into high gear. It's like, all right, we know who these guys are from watching NXT and even further back into the indies, and we know that they're tag partners, so the story basically writes itself. And they beat the ever-living shit out of each other in this match. So many of the things that they did to each other were just insane. To some of the hard hits, to some of the hard falls. And like I said, it was a terrific match to close out the first round with. And you got that nice moment after it was over where Gargano won, and Ciampa sat with him in the ring, and they congratulated each other on such a terrific match. I'm really surprised that Gargano didn't go further in the tournament, but I guess since he's going to the Cruiserweight division on Raw, they pulled him out of the tournament early and prepped him for that. Although I loved that his injury from the Revival tag team match ultimately played into him losing the Cruiserweight tournament. I love that consistency. I thought that was great. And TJ Perkins, he gets another payday out of it, so that's all good in there. He may even wind up being kept around for the Raw Cruiserweight division, who knows. But the Cruiserweight Classic and the G1 Climax were the major highlights in August, I think. You got a few other great things, obviously, but those were the two things that really stood out to me and really entertained me the most as a wrestling fan. And the Cruiserweight Classic in particular, I think has been terrific. And the best thing WWE is doing right now. Hopefully, like I said, hopefully it's a sign of things to come for the Raw Cruiserweight division. But that is all I have for you guys now. Tomorrow is Labor Day, so enjoy that. I have the day off. 4-day weekend. It's fucking great. I'm bragging. Loved it. And like I said, hope you all enjoy the day off tomorrow, and I will see you all later. So peace out.